It's 8:43 a.m. on August 15, 1943, high above the island of Vella La Vella. First Lieutenant Kenneth Walsh watches his entire fighter section get torn apart. He knows that in the next 90 seconds he's either going to die or he's going to do something no American pilot has ever done before. He's 26 years old. He has just 189 hours in the cockpit of his F-4U Corsair, and he has zero experience fighting 50 Japanese fighters. All by himself. The Imperial Japanese Navy has thrown everything they have into the sky. Every single Zero fighter from their base at Rabaul is in the air, with one mission: sweep the American patrols out of the morning sky. 50 Mitsubishi A-6 MiZ. These are the most agile, deadly fighters in the Pacific, flown by pilots who each have around 800 hours of combat time. Walsh is supposed to be flying escort for a dozen torpedo bombers, a strike package aimed at crippling Japanese supply lines. On paper, it was a routine job. Protect the bombers, go home. Easy. That plan lasted right up until the Zeros came screaming down out of the high cloud layer at 22,000 feet. Walsh's section leader took a 20mm shell straight through his cockpit. He was dead before he could even key his microphone. Walsh's wingman panicked and broke hard, disappearing from the fight. Another pilot shoved his stick forward, diving for the safety of the ocean deck. Two more turned for home, trailing smoke, their radios crackling with calls for help and half-finished curses. When the chaos settled, a new, terrifying reality set in. Walsh was alone at 19,000 feet. And 50 Zeros were diving right past him, straight for the bombers below. American fighter doctrine was crystal clear on this. If you're outnumbered more than 3-1, you disengage. You run. You live to fight another day. Losing a single fighter could be written off. Losing that fighter and an entire squadron of torpedo bombers was a catastrophe. He could see them, 12 TBF Avenger torpedo bombers, each one carrying a heavy torpedo. Each one with a crew of 3 men, 36 Americans down there, flying steady thinking they had a fighter screen protecting them. But they didn't. They had one man, one Corsair. The Zeros were closing fast. Walsh had maybe 10 seconds to make a choice. Follow the manual and save himself. Or break every rule in the book, stay in the fight, and almost certainly die trying to save 36 men whose names he didn't even know. To understand the choice he made, you have to understand who Kenneth Walsh was before he ever climbed into a cockpit. He was a mechanic, born in Brooklyn, New York in 1916, 2 Irish immigrants who worked the docks. When he was just 13, his father died in a horrible industrial accident. A crane cable snapped. His mother couldn't afford to keep him in school, so at 14 he left the classroom and walked into his uncle's garage on Flatbush Avenue. The sign over the door read Patrick Walsh & Sons Automotive. It was a place that took on the problems other shops gave up on. Engines that sputtered for no reason, transmissions that nobody could diagnose. Strange noises that baffled other mechanics. For 6 years, Walsh lived with grease under his fingernails, learning how machines really worked, not from diagrams in a book, but from taking them apart and putting them back together, piece by piece, until they behaved. His uncle taught him the single most important lesson he would ever learn. Everything is a system. You can't just fix one part without understanding how it connects to everything else. You can't fix a transmission without knowing how power flows from the engine, through the gearbox, and to the wheels. You can fix the brakes without thinking about how a car's weight shifts when it slows down. Every single part affects every other part. Nothing works in isolation. By 1941, Walsh was the guy other mechanics called when they were completely stumped. He could stand next to a running engine, just listen to its idle and tell you exactly what was wrong. He could feel a faint vibration through a steering wheel and know precisely which ball bearing was about to fail. He was making a decent living, enough to help his mother and put a little money aside. He dreamed of one day opening his own shop, with his own name on the sign. Then, the newsreels lit up with images of Pearl Harbor burning. The very next day, December 8, 1941, Walsh walked into the Marine Corps recruiting office on Court Street and said he wanted to fix airplanes. They gave him the standard aptitude tests. His mechanical skills were off the chart, problem solving, exceptional, spatial reasoning, 98th percentile. The recruiter looked up from the paperwork and said, "We don't need you holding a toolbox. We need you in a cockpit." Walsh protested. He didn't know the first thing about flying. The recruiter just smiled and said, "We'll fix that." When he officially enlisted in 1942, Walsh requested a mechanics assignment anyway. The Marine Corps flat out ignored him. They saw too much raw talent to waste on turning wrenches. They sent him straight to flight training. At first, Walsh hated flying, especially the airplane they put him in, the F-4U Corsair. It was a monster, with its distinctive bent wings, long nose, and brutally powerful engine. It was fast, it was deadly, and it was infamous. Student pilots had a whole list of nicknames for it: the Ensign Eliminator, the Widowmaker, the Bentwing Bastard. All those names meant one thing: this airplane had a nasty habit of killing its own pilots, and the numbers proved it. In just 6 months, the Navy lost 76 Corsairs in training accidents alone. 76 brand new aircraft, completely destroyed. 54 pilots, dead, not in combat, not facing enemy fire, just trying to learn how to get the thing off the ground and back down again in one piece. The heart of the problem was the engine. A Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp, 18 cylinders, 2,000 horsepower. But all that power came with a heavy price: torque, a massive rotational force that constantly wanted to roll the entire aircraft to the left. From inside the cockpit, the propellers spun clockwise. Newton's third law states that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So, as the prop turned one way, the whole airframe wanted to twist violently the other way. At low speeds, like during takeoff, the ailerons on the wings don't have enough air flowing over them to fight that torque effectively. The Corsair wants to roll left, and it wants to do it hard. If a pilot didn't T-catch it with the perfect amount of right aileron and right rudder, if you were a split second late or just a little bit sloppy, the left wing would drop, the plane would snap, roll cartwheel down the runway, and your short flying career would end in a ball of fire. Instructors taught pilots to wrestle the machine, to manhandle it, ease the power in, hold the controls tight, and pray. But Walsh wasn't like the other pilots. He wasn't a daredevil or a hotshot. He was a mechanic. He didn't see an enemy to be wrestled. He saw a system that was out of balance. He knew, from his years in the garage, that you don't fight a machine. You understand it, you listen to it, you work with it. So, while other students were fighting the controls, Walsh was feeling the airplay. He paid attention to how the torque changed with the throttle. He learned to anticipate the roll before it even started, feeding in rudder and aileron not as a reaction, but as part of a smooth, balanced dance with the engine. He wasn't flying the Corsair, he was tuning it in real time, and that's what made him different. It's what kept him alive through training, and it's what gave him the answer he needed in that critical moment. High above the Pacific, with 50 enemy fighters diving on his watch, he wasn't just a pilot, he was a mechanic who understood the entire system. And the system didn't end at his wingtips. It included those 12 bomber crews below 36 men. He was part of their system, and you can't just fix one part. You have to save the whole machine. He looked at the 50 Zeros, and he looked at the 12 bombers. The manual screamed at him to run. His instincts, forged in a greasy Brooklyn garage, told him something else entirely. Everything is a system, and this system was about to break. He was the only one who could fix it. Walsh took a breath, pushed the throttle forward, and banked his Corsair not towards home, but straight down into the heart of the enemy formation. He was no longer following the rules. He was about to write his own. Thanks so much for watching. If you're fascinated by stories of incredible courage and ingenuity, be sure to hit that subscribe button and join us for more. We'll see you in the next one. Imagine trying to arm wrestle a 2,000 horsepower engine. That's what it was like to fly the F-4U Corsair, one of the most powerful and feared fighter planes of World War II. It had a massive engine and propeller, which created so much torque that the plane constantly wanted to roll to the left. To keep the wings level, pilots had to add more and more right aileron as the torque ramped up. Most pilots flew the Corsair with white knuckles, clenching the control stick so hard their hands cramped and their arms shook, just trying to hold the wings straight. Their entire world narrowed down to one thought: don't let it roll. This worked, for a while. But then fatigue would set in. Concentration would slip. The plane would hit a bump of rough air, and the torque would win. The left wing would drop, the pilot would overcorrect, and then the right wing would drop. They'd get into a wild, uncontrollable oscillation, and then the aircraft would flip and crater. It was a deadly dance. Walsh's first Corsair instructor was a Marine captain named Robert Fraser, a combat veteran with 32 sorties and 6 confirmed kills. He'd seen too many good pilots die in training, men who never even got the chance to face an enemy zero. On Walsh's third training flight, Fraser said something that changed everything. They were at 8,000 feet over Pensacola, practicing power on stalls. This meant bringing the aircraft right to the edge of losing lift, then adding power to recover without losing control. Every time Walsh pushed the throttle forward, the Corsair violently rolled left. He fought it with right aileron and the aircraft jerked right. He eased off, and it rolled left again. Back and forth, a shaky, unsettled flight. Fraser's voice came over the intercom. Almost bored. Walsh, You're trying to arm wrestle 2,000 horsepower. You won't win that fight. Stop trying to negate the torque by brute force. That's not how you fly this airplane. Breathing hard, Walsh asked. Then what do I do? Fraser replied. The aircraft wants to roll left, let it. You just decide how much and when. Walsh was confused. Fraser elaborated. Torque from the engine is constant when the power is constant. It's not random, it's predictable, so you don't fight it in real time. You preload your controls before you add power. Trim in some right rudder, dial in a little right air. Then when you advance the throttle, the airframe and the controls are already in balance. You're not fighting the torque, you're managing it. In that moment, something clicked. Walsh remembered his uncle back in Brooklyn, balancing a drive shaft on the 36 Ford. His uncle had said, when an engine makes torque, it doesn't just twist the shaft, it pushes on the mounts, the frame, the whole car. You can't pretend the force stays in one place. You have to think about all of it up there in the Corsair. Walsh realized he wasn't flying an airplane with an engine problem. He was flying a system. The engine, the prop, the airframe, the control surfaces, they were all connected. The torque wasn't some isolated annoyance. It was a fundamental part of the machine's behavior. You don't fight a system piece by piece. You shape it. So, he did what Fraser suggested. He set the rudder trim to anticipate the torque. He dialed in just enough right aileron. Then, he added power smoothly. He felt the Corsair try to roll left, but he also felt his preset controls catch it perfectly. The wing stayed level. There was no wrestling match, no panic, just pure, clean balance. Fraser noticed immediately. His tone changed. What did you just do? He asked. Walsh explained his new understanding. Think about the entire system, not just the stick. Fraser was quiet for about 10 seconds. Then he said, keep doing that. Whatever you just figured out, make it a habit. Walsh applied this systemic way of thinking to everything: takeoffs, landings, aerobatics, combat maneuvers. He stopped treating the Corsair like a wild animal that needed to be tamed and started treating it like a dynamic physics problem, predictable forces that could be pre-managed. While other student pilots were struggling, ground looping their Corsairs and washing out of the program, Walsh's flying looked effortless. His takeoffs were dead straight. His landings kissed the runway. His maneuvers were precise, not shaky. The instructors couldn't always explain why his flying was so clean, but they could see the results. 0 incidents. No near misses, no almost lost it moments. He advanced through training faster than the syllabus required. He got extra formation work and was even asked to demonstrate techniques for students who were struggling. By the time he graduated in February 1943, he had 112 hours in Corsairs. A large chunk of those hours had been spent showing other pilots how to fly the aircraft as a system, not an enemy. He arrived in the Pacific in May 1943 with 189 Corsair hours and a perfect safety record. No ground loops, no bent airframes, no torque-induced accidents. His squadron commander, Major Gregory "Greg" Grace, summed it up in one phrase: Walsh flies like a machine. He meant it as a compliment. Walsh took it as proof that thinking like a mechanic made him a better fighter pilot than thinking like a duelist. But there's a world of difference between smooth training flights over California and facing 50 Japanese Zeros over the Solomon Islands. Walsh had seen Zeros in combat before, but only in small scuffles, 2-on-2 or 3-on-4, where the American pilots could use their advantages of speed, diving performance, and firepower. His first kill came on June 23 over Andover. It was a classic Japanese mover. Zero bounced his section from above, glinting in the sun as it began its attack. Walsh saw it coming. He shoved the nose down, letting the Corsair build speed to a blistering 400 miles per hour. Then, he pulled hard into a climb, trading that speed for altitude. The Zero tried to follow, to keep pace in the vertical climb, but its engine just couldn't sustain it. The Zero stalled out at the top of its climb. This was the moment. Walsh rolled his Corsair inverted, came down behind the helpless enemy plane, and opened fire from about 300 yards. It was a textbook execution, a testament to understanding his machine, not as an adversary, but as a complete, predictable system. He wasn't just flying an airplane, he was conducting an orchestra of horsepower, aerodynamics, and physics. And in the deadly skies of the Pacific, that understanding was the ultimate weapon. The Zero exploded, 1 kill. This was all the proof Walsh needed. Energy management wasn't just some abstract theory, it was a life-and-death reality in combat. His second and third kills came just days later. On July 11th, Japanese Zeros jumped his wingman. Walsh, positioned high above, rolled in, dived, and shredded the first enemy plane with a single burst. The second Zero, seeing its partner go down, broke hard to the right, trying to lure Walsh into a turning fight. It was a classic trap, and most pilots would have taken the bait. But Walsh didn't bite. He pushed his nose straight ahead, building speed, and used that energy to climb right back up, regaining his altitude advantage. Down below, the Japanese pilot was frantically searching, craning his neck left and right. He never thought to look straight up. From his 6 o'clock high perch, Walsh dropped in, fired, and watched the second Zero trail smoke as it spiraled toward the sea. By the middle of July, he had 3 confirmed kills. He was learning that the Corsair's true weapons weren't just its 6.50 caliber machine guns or its tough airframe. Its greatest weapon was the R2800 engine, 2,000 horsepower that could be converted into speed, into altitude, into tactical positions that the nimble Zero simply couldn't match. But no pilot anywhere was trained for a 1 against 50 scenario. There were no tactics for that. No briefing slides, no what to do if you're alone with 50 hostiles chapter in the manual. Intelligence records showed only 2 instances where a lone Allied fighter had engaged more than 20 enemy planes and survived. Both were in Europe. Both were P-47 pilots. And even they hadn't fought the entire formation. They made quick, slashing passes and then used their altitude and cloud cover to escape. Walsh had no clouds. He was at 19,000 feet, in crystal clear air. Visibility stretched for miles. The Zeros could see him just as clearly as he could see them. There was nowhere to hide, and nowhere to run where they couldn't follow. The dynamics of this fight were terrifyingly simple. The Zero was a master of maneuverability. It was lightweight, with low wing loading and minimal armor. Every curve of its airframe was optimized for sharp, tight turns. It could outturn the Corsair at almost any speed below 300 miles per hour. Below 15,000 feet, it could even outclimb him. The Corsair was a different beast entirely. It was heavy, packed with armor and ammunition. It was built for speed and punch, more of a fighter bomber than a pure dogfighter. In a classic turning battle, a Corsair against a Zero was a death sentence. The Japanese pilot would get inside the Corsair's turn radius, plant himself on its tail, and cut it to pieces. American doctrine was built around this reality. Don't turn with a Zero. Use your speed, use your altitude. Dive, shoot, and escape. Those rules had kept a lot of American pilots alive. But this wasn't a textbook fight. Walsh wasn't facing 3 or 4 enemies. He was watching 50 fighters screaming toward 12 friendly bombers, carrying 36 men. If he followed the manual and ran, those bombers were doomed. If he stayed, by all logic he was doomed. He had to reassess his advantages. The Corsair had 2 real edges: incredible speed in a dive, and overwhelming firepower. 6 Browning M2.50 caliber machine guns were mounted in its wings. Each fired around 800 rounds per minute, creating a combined fire rate of nearly 4,800 rounds per minute. That's 80 bullets leaving the barrels every single second. In a 3-second burst, Walsh could throw more lead at a target than a Zero pilot could in 30. While the Zero's cannons hit hard, they didn't have the same volume of fire. Japanese fighters relied on maneuverability to line up the perfect shot. American fighters relied on a sheer wall of lead to end the fight in a single, brutal burst. But none of that mattered if he tried to aim at 50 separate targets, each one capable of outturning him. He couldn't dogfight them. He had to force them into his guns. He had maybe 90 seconds to take everything he knew about flight mechanics and invent a whole new way of fighting. The first Zero came at him from 11 o'clock high, a steep, diving textbook attack. The enemy pilot was using his altitude and speed, planning to spray the Corsair and score an easy kill before Walsh could even react. Walsh watched him commit, saw the nose drop, saw the angle steepen. He saw the first flickers of muzzle flash from about 800 yards out. Too far. The Zero pilot was rushing his shot, either eager for the kill or nervous about diving in ahead of his pack. Walsh didn't break away. He didn't dive for the deck. He did something that went against every instinct and rule drilled into a fighter pilot's head. He turned toward the threat. It wasn't a desperate, tight turn, just a smooth, 20-degree bank in the Zero's direction, with the nose eased slightly up. From the Zero's cockpit, it must have looked like Walsh was setting up for a head-on passer suicidal move at a combined speed of over 600 miles per hour, 400 yards. Walsh made his move. He snapped the Corsair hard to the right full aileron, full rudder, using every ounce of the big fighter's power. The Corsair rolled 90 degrees in under 2 seconds and began clawing its way up into a steep climbing turn. The Zero pilot tried to follow, but he had built up too much speed in his dive. At that velocity, the Zero's legendary turning ability vanished. It couldn't turn as tightly, it couldn't pitch its nose up as sharply. Its greatest advantage was neutralized in an instant. Walsh wasn't trying to get into a turning circle. He was pulling his aircraft into a vertical path that would intersect the Zero's future trajectory. He wasn't chasing his enemy. He was moving into the space where the enemy had to be. This was three-dimensional geometry, not dogfighting. At the apex of his climb, Walsh leveled his wings, rolled inverted, and pulled the nose down. The Zero was now below him, still struggling to bring its nose up for a shot. It was too late. Walsh's guns spoke. A 3-second burst. All 650s roared at once. A line of bright tracers walked right up the Zero's wing. The wing blew apart. The fuel tank ruptured. Fire erupted. The Zero rolled over and tumbled toward the ocean. Walsh didn't have the luxury of watching it fall. 4 more Zeros were already angling in on him. The fight for survival, and for the lives of the bomber crews, had only just begun. He did it again, turned toward the threat, rolled, climbed. He let the powerful R2800 engine hold his Corsair into places the Zeros just weren't expecting him to be. He wasn't trying to outturn them, that was their game. Instead, he was arranging his flight path so that any Zero wanting a shot would have no choice but to fly directly through his firing cone. The second Zero repeated the first one's mistake, coming in too steep, too fast, too committed. Walsh cut through the vertical, crossed its path, and put a short burst right into the engine cowling. The Zero's propeller froze instantly. The fighter immediately began losing speed and altitude, drifting helplessly toward the jungle below. The third and fourth Zeros tried a smarter move. They split wide and came in from opposite sides, a classic pincer attack. The goal was to force Walsh to pick one threat. Whichever one he turned toward, the other would have a clean shot at his tail. But Walsh didn't ease toward either one. He went straight up. He shoved the throttle to the firewall, let the Corsair stand on its tail, and climbed directly into the blinding sun. The Corsair's A2800 engine had roughly 2,000 horsepower. The Zero's Sake engine, by comparison, produced maybe 1,200. In a pure vertical contest, with energy already on his side, Walsh had them beat. Both Zeros tried to follow. Their noses came up, their speed bled off, and then they simply ran out of climb. They stalled, mushing and wobbling in the air beneath him. Walsh reached about 5,000 feet above them, rolled his Corsair upside down, picked one of the stalled fighters, and dove. The Corsair dropped through the sky like a thrown anvil, screaming past 400 miles per hour. Energy turning into speed, and speed turning into impact. The Zero pilot tried to dive away, but he couldn't outrun gravity and 2,000 horsepower roaring behind Walsh. From 400 yards, the range was long, but the target was predictable. The Zero was practically flying a straight line. Walsh squeezed the trigger. The stream of 50 caliber rounds stitched along the fuselage and found the cockpit. The Zero rolled and dropped, trailing a thick plume of smoke. That was 3 kills in just a minute and a half. Walsh pulled out of the dive at 12,000 feet. His airspeed sat around 420 miles per hour. The Corsair shuddered, right at the edge of its structural comfort zone. The wings flexed under the strain, but his hands were steady. His breathing was controlled. He wasn't thinking about dogfighting. He was thinking about torque, thrust, lift, and drag. He was thinking about moving his airplane across an invisible grid of energy states where the nimble Zero simply could follow. The Japanese pilots started to catch on that Walsh wasn't playing their game. He wasn't trying to circle with them. He wasn't falling for their scissors or flat turns. He was using altitude, speed, and raw power to create situations where every choice they made was a bad one. Follow him up. You stall. Dive on him. He turns your attack into a geometry problem and you end up flying through his bullets. Try to out-accelerate, the Corsair just walks away. Each fork in the road led to the same place, a falling Zero. By then, the main enemy formation had finally finished sorting itself out. 30-plus fighters at staggered heights, all of them now sliding toward Walsh. The friendly bombers were 5 miles away, running low and hard over the water, trying to reach their target before the Japanese could break loose and chase them down. Walsh glanced at his fuel gauge. He had maybe 20 minutes left. 20 minutes to keep as many of those fighters focused on him as possible. 20 minutes to be louder, brighter, and more dangerous than 12 lumbering Avenger bombers. The next wave came in from his 6 o'clock 6 Zeros and trail. They'd managed to climb above him and were now diving on his tail. A textbook bounce. They had the altitude advantage, the speed advantage, and the numbers advantage. Walsh saw them, and he did something that sounded completely insane on paper. He chopped the throttle. The Corsair's power dropped instantly. His airspeed fell from around 350 miles per hour to 280 in seconds. The controls started to feel soft, on the very edge of a stall. The 6 Zeros were committed to their dive at over 400 miles per hour. They couldn't scrub that speed fast enough. They overshot. All 6 of them slid past his tail and wound up ahead of him, not behind. Walsh rammed the throttle forward. The R-2800 roared back to life. The Corsair surged. He locked onto the last 0 in that string and fired a 3-second burst. The Japanese fighter erupted in a fireball. Chunks of metal and flame spun past Walsh's canopy. The remaining 5 scattered, breaking away in different directions. They had just learned a hard lesson. Diving on the lone American from behind was unsafe either. Walsh climbed again, back into altitude, back into energy. Every second he spent high was a second the Zeros had to spend climbing after him. And every second they spent climbing was a second they weren't free to go after the bombers. He could hear their radio chatter, their voices sharp and tense. He didn't understand the words, but he didn't have to. Frustration has a tone all its own. One voice kept repeating something in a clipped, angry rhythm, calling him crazy, swearing, ordering someone to get rid of him. Walsh didn't care what they called him. He cared that all that anger was aimed at Hammond, not at the Avengers. The next coordinated attack was bigger. They'd learned from their mistakes. No more sending in small elements piecemeal. This time they came from everywhere. 8 Zeros from high, 6 from the left and right, 4 from below, 18 fighters all converging on one Corsair. There was no maneuver that could dodge every vector. If he climbed, he'd fly into the guns of the ones above. If he dove, he'd feed himself to the ones below. If he turned, he'd present a perfect broadside to one flank or the other. So Walsh did the only thing left to do. He attacked the biggest threat head-on. He pointed his nose at the 8 Zeros, plunging down from above, shoved the throttle forward, and climbed straight at them. From their point of view, he must have looked completely suicidal. Head-on, closing at hundreds of miles per hour. At around 600 yards, Walsh squeezed the trigger. The sky lit up with the intersecting paths of tracers, a desperate gamble in a 3-dimensional chess match where he was the only piece on his side of the board. Imagine being a single pilot, staring down 50 enemy planes. Hopeless, right? For most it would be a death sentence. But on August 15, 1943, one Marine pilot named Kenneth Walsh faced exactly those odds. And what he did next wouldn't just save lives, it would change how air combat was fought forever. This is the story of how one man, thinking like an engineer in a cockpit, proved that physics could be the ultimate weapon. The sky over Vella La Vella was buzzing with Japanese Zeros, 18 of them forming a synchronized attack group, closing in on a squadron of American torpedo bombers. Below them, a lone F-4U Corsair climbed to meet them. But the pilot, Kenneth Walsh, wasn't trying to pick a fight with just one plane. He did something completely unexpected. He wasn't shooting at a specific aircraft. He was lighting up the space they were moving through, throwing streams of tracer rounds right into the middle of their formation. The effect was instantaneous. The lead Zero was hit and peeled away. Another flinched and broke left. In just 3 seconds, Walsh had turned a perfectly coordinated attack into a chaotic scramble of individual fighters trying not to get hit. He then rolled off, dove toward another group, and fired into them. Same result. They scattered, their attack plan shattered. Walsh wasn't trying to win individual dogfights. He was treating the sky like a giant physics problem. He was managing energy and position, forcing the enemy pilots to waste fuel and ammunition just reacting to him, instead of attacking the vulnerable bombers. It was exhausting work. His arms ached from pulling high-G maneuvers. His neck screamed from constantly checking his 6. Sweat pooled inside his oxygen mask, but he kept at it, climbing, diving, and forcing the Zeros into one bad choice after another. These Japanese pilots were veterans. They knew tactics, discipline, and how to shoot down Americans. But they had never faced someone who fought like this. They had never fought a mechanic in a fighter plane. After 15 minutes of pure relentless combat, Walsh's fuel gauge went from concerning to critical. He was on the verge of being forced to break away and run for home. Just as he thought he had nothing left to give, a voice crackled over the radio. Bomber's feet wet, egressing target. Appreciate the cover, Marine. He looked down. 12 Avenger bombers, all still flying. 36 crewmen, all alive. They had dropped their torpedoes and were heading home. Not a single one had been lost. Walsh took a moment to look around. He counted 38 Zeros still in the sky. He had 4 confirmed kills and probably damaged 3 more. But the most important number was 0. 0 Avengers lost. He had just done what every briefing had said was impossible. One Corsair had fought 50 Zeros and not only survived but had successfully defended its objective. He turned his battered Corsair for home. The Zeros, low on fuel, low on ammo, and likely a little unnerved by this crazy Marine, didn't follow. He landed back at the airfield just 44 minutes after taking off, his fuel tanks practically dry. He had only 23 rounds of ammunition left. Ground crews later counted 7 bullet holes in his plane, but none had hit anything vital. The system had held. The intelligence officer debriefed him for 2 straight hours. How many did you fight? How did you stay alive? Walsh didn't talk about bravery or luck. He talked about torque, about energy, about using vertical maneuvers and raw power to create positions where the enemy had to fly into his guns. The officer wrote it all down, and the report went up the chain of command. The big question was, could this be taught? Word spread faster than the official paperwork. Stories of Walsh, the mechanic who took on 50 zeros and won. Walsh who single-handedly shielded a bomber formation. Walsh who showed that the Corsair, in the right hands, could dominate the sky. Pilots from other squadrons started requesting transfers to his. They didn't just want to learn how to shoot, they wanted to learn his way of flying. They wanted to understand energy, not just angles. Walsh would go on to fly 63 more combat missions, shooting down another 16 aircraft. But that day over Vella La Vella remained the defining moment of his career. It wasn't just about the 4 confirmed kills, it was about the 36 lives he saved and the tactical shift he inspired across marine aviation. In November 1943, he was awarded the Medal of Honor. The citation praised his extraordinary heroism and devotion to duty. It mentioned the overwhelming odds and the 4 kills, but it said nothing about torque, energy states, or the mechanic's brain that saw the battle differently. Medals are for courage, but Walsh's true contribution was proving that you could survive hopeless odds if you stopped fighting on instinct and started fighting by physics. The pilots who flew with him knew the real story. The ones he trained understood his genius. His real breakthrough wasn't just killing for zeros, it was a new way of thinking. The battle on August 15th became required reading in aviation schools. Navy and Army Air Force units studied it. The lesson was clear. The Corsair wasn't just a brute force fighter. It was an engineering problem with wings. Its 2,000 horsepower engine wasn't just a lot of power. It was potential energy, ready to be converted into altitude, then back into speed, and finally, into a superior position. Speed wasn't about flying fast in a straight line. It was a currency you could spend. Lose speed to gain height. Spend height to gain speed. Trade energy to control the fight. Pilots who learned this lesson lived longer, scored more kills, and came home from battles they were told were unwinnable. Before rotating stateside in 1944, Walsh personally trained 23 pilots who took his revolutionary ideas into the air with them. The results were dramatic. In early 1943, Corsairs were being lost to zeros at a rate of about 1.3 to 1. By late 1944, that ratio had flipped to an astounding 11 to 1 in favor of the Corsair. Better aircraft and more experienced pilots helped, but a huge part of that leap came from Walsh-style tactics spreading through the ranks. Pilots stopped trying to outturn the nimble zeros and started fighting vertically using power and gravity as their allies. Even Japanese radio intercepts from that time noted that the Corsairs were fighting differently, climbing aggressively and using their power in ways they hadn't before. Kenneth Walsh's legacy isn't just in the medals he won or the planes he shot down. It's in the countless pilots who came home because they learned to see the sky not as an arena for duels, but as a system of forces to be mastered. He was a hero, an innovator, and a teacher who reminded everyone that sometimes the smartest way to fight is to rewrite the rules of the game. To survive, American pilots had to unlearn everything they thought they knew about dogfighting. Instead of trying to outturn the nimble Japanese Zero, they started diving with purpose, refusing to get drawn into the turning fights the Zero was built to win. Some Japanese pilots adapted, trying hit-and-run tactics of their own. But many couldn't give up what they'd spent years mastering. They had trained their whole careers to outturn opponents, and could just switch to a style that meant giving up their biggest advantage. By mid-1944, experienced Zero pilots often avoided tangling with Corsairs altogether. They'd hunt for Wildcats, Hellcats, anything but those distinctive bent-wing fighters flown by Marines who thought like engineers. The balance of power in the sky had shifted, and the man who tipped the scales was a mechanic from Brooklyn who understood torque. After the war, Kenneth Walsh stayed in uniform. He loved flying, he loved teaching, and he loved watching younger pilots have that aha moment when the physics finally clicked for them. He went on to command fighter squadrons in the Korean War, flying F-9F Panther jets a world away from the radial-engined Corsairs, but the core principles never changed. Energy, position, systems. Retired as a colonel in 1962 after 20 years of service, with 473 combat missions in World War II in Korea and 21 confirmed victories. The numbers are impressive, but they don't tell the whole story. Walsh helped revolutionize air combat, moving it from gut-feel dogfighting to a science of physics-based energy maneuvering. Modern fighter pilots still study the concepts he pioneered. At Pensacola, at Top Gun, and other advanced weapons schools, the foundations are the same. The vocabulary has evolved. Energy management is now energy maneuverability theory. Vertical reversals are called high yo-yos and low yo-yos, but the math behind it all remains unchanged. Convert speed into altitude. Convert altitude into a superior position. Convert that advantage into victory. Walsh passed away on March 30, 1998, at the age of 81. His funeral at Arlington National Cemetery was attended by over 200 Marine aviators. Some were old men who had shared ready rooms with him in the Pacific. Others were younger pilots who had never met him but had flown in his shadow, using the very techniques that first took shape in his mind high above the island of Vella La Vella. Every time a pilot pulls a vertical maneuver, trading speed for height, they are using ideas born in the cockpit of a lone mechanic with 50 enemies trying to kill him. Today, you can see Walsh's Medal of Honor citation at the National Museum of the Marine Corps in Quantico. Beside it, there's a photograph of him standing next to his Corsair, number 15, the same aircraft he flew that historic day. Painted on the fuselage are 4 small Japanese flags, representing his 4 victories from August 15, 1943. The plaque reads, First Lieutenant Kenneth Walsh, Medal of Honor recipient, engaged 50 Japanese fighters alone and saved a bomber formation from destruction. It doesn't mention torque, energy, or the word mechanic, but if you talk to the descents, especially the ones who once wore pilot wings themselves, they'll tell you the deeper truth. They'll tell you Walsh's real brilliance wasn't just raw courage, it was understanding. He understood that air combat isn't about who can yank the stick harder. It's about who understands the machine and the sky better, who plays to their aircraft's strengths instead of the enemy's, who thinks in 3 dimensions while everyone else is stuck in 2. That's how real innovation happens in war, not in a conference room or a textbook, but in the cockpit of a fighter, where one person looks at an impossible problem and chooses to see physics instead of fear. If this story about Kenneth Walsh resonated with you, do us a small favor that has a big impact. Tap that like button. Every like tells the algorithm to share this story with more people who appreciate these unsung heroes. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We rededicated to digging these incredible stories out of archives and fading memories every week so they never forgotten. You're not just watching a video, you're helping us keep these legacies alive. Drop a comment below. Let us know where you're watching from, or if someone in your family wore a uniform. Just let us know you're out there with us. Thank you for watching, and thank you for making sure Kenneth Walsh's story is heard.